Okay, so boom, where we going next? Chicago World's Fair. Chicago World's Fair. The post-Columbian exposition. Columbian referring to Christopher Columbus and his discovery of America, which we know he didn't discover shit. He occupied. But basically, it was supposed to be an exhibition of the New World that is now occupied at this time, because now it's the 1800s. So it's been couple hundred years rather, since the occupation of this landmass we now call America, that Christopher Columbus called the West Indies, that has now been colonized. Its inhabitants are now enslaved and or prisoners of war, in a sense, because not everybody was enslaved. Oh yes, and I mean us, black people. We was already here. We were called copper colored, then just colored, and then Negro, and then African American, and then black, and or African American. Anywho, oh yeah, and somewhere in there called Indian. I digress. The Chicago World's Fair. But first, let me rewind. So the first documented correspondences of people moving through Chicago was the French in the late 1600s. And then the first settlement was established by Jean-Baptiste Dusable, which is where we get Dusable Museum from, a Haitian who was the first documented settler, I guess, about 100 so years later in the late 1700s. And then about 50-ish years later, that's when the city of Chicago was incorporated in the 1830s. Then fast forward about 60 more years, and now we have the Chicago World's Fair. Now, if you look up any documented correspondences on the Chicago World's Fair, if you watch any documentary, actually there's like it's like a 2-hour documentary that Gene Wilder, which is Willy Wonka from the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the one in his meme. Y'all know the meme I'm talking about. Anyway, he was the narrator for it. You can look it up on YouTube. But this was not just some type of carnival. This was quite literally an international affair where every country that was any country, from the largest to the smallest, had some type of exhibition at this fair. The fair stretched over the whole city. There was huge, crazy buildings exhibiting each country's culture. There was a street fair right outside of the World's Fair where all of the smaller countries were that had more of the risque type of exhibitions. Think more Amsterdam, red light district type of stuff going on. Exotic dancers, belly dancers, that kind of thing. And that was in where Chicago, the University of Chicago is at today. It's called Midway Plaisance or Plaisance, however you pronounce that word. It's a street that runs right through Jackson Park, right outside the University of Chicago. That's where a lot of the attractions, I guess, were. Like the main street that ran through the Chicago World's Fair. Anyway, all of these countries from around the world came and built all of these buildings to exhibit their culture and their country's finest inventions or whatever. All of the big inventors at the time had shows there. That was where the Museum of Science and Industry, that's where all of the inventions were. It was once called the Building of Fine Arts or something. Actually, hold on. Sorry, it was called the Palace of Fine Arts Building. Palace. And does it not look like a palace? Wonder why it's called a palace. Almost like there was, I don't know, some type of ancient civilization that might have had royalty here or whatever. But anyway, all of these people had all of these buildings, all of these countries rather. Some of the buildings are still here. Some of the stuff that they built is still here. Like a little Japanese garden that's near the Field Museum over there and Museum Campus, I think. Technically, that's called. Actually, let me look that up. Sorry, they're now calling it the Garden of Phoenix, which is in Jackson Park. But that is something that the Japanese built during the Chicago World's Fair. Anywho, all of these buildings allegedly were taken down because they were temporary structures and or mysteriously burned to the ground. Where have we heard that one before in this city? Oh yeah, when the cow kicked over the lamp and burnt the city down. And then we raised it. So you mean to tell me all of these countries built all of these buildings, temporary buildings, for this miraculous World's Fair, Columbian Exposition. And the ones that weren't temporary just burned down? Except these palaces that we can't burn down, because you obviously can't burn down a palace. Well, some of them obviously probably did get burned down, but anywho, no, they destroyed it. You want to know why they destroyed it? NWO. And now we are underneath the NWO regime. So let's just recap. We know America wasn't discovered. It was occupied. We know we weren't all just shipped over here. We were already here. And now we know that this land wasn't just stolen from its original inhabitants and occupied by invaders, colonizers. But this land was not only rich in culture, had advanced architecture and civilization, but the people who occupied it and stole it didn't want its descendants to know what it once was. So they destroyed the buildings and the evidence and burned down the books and the libraries, buried it, and built the city on top of it, and now tell you that's what the city is. And they built it in 1800s. Welcome to Chicago.